Hi. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we must begin on such a wonderful day. I know it's rather nice to be able to stay outside. I want to introduce our next session when we're getting down to business. I know all this stuff about democracy is all so highfalutin. I want to look at what it means to try to put politics into practice. And we've two very practical speakers who are going to give you presentations here up on the wall. First, Peter Bishop, who was the first director of design for the City of London and now is a professor of urban planning at University College London. But he travels all over the world telling his story and giving his view of how urban planning actually needs to become much more flexible, open, dynamic, and so on. I think you will really enjoy Peter's presentation. Yuri Nazarov is Director of Communication of the City of Kiev, and who can bring home to us the challenges facing immediately the city here of planning to make a city livable, dynamic, harmonious, engaged with its citizens. So I think you're going to give us a presentation too, Yuri, and that's splendid. So first, Peter Bishop.
Is that working? That's working, yeah? Great. Well, first of all, thank you. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. First time in Kiev. I've been here 24 hours, so plenty of time to have mature reflections on the city. But last night we walked to a restaurant around the lake near here, and what I saw was this very, very perfect setting of urban life. People swimming, people running, people fishing, and a piece of city which was working as a crucible for people to enjoy it and enjoy being citizens. We heard earlier this morning about whether or not the city is a place of tyranny or a crucible for democracy. And in my presentation, I'm going to talk about how we design cities so they can open up the possibilities of debate. And reflecting that personally, I was trained so long ago at a period when modernism, hard solutions, we knew the answers. And my career has been a journey away from that. To probably reflect the words of Krzysztof Kieślowski, who talked about, beware of people who know the answers. People who know the answers cause the greatest pain. So I think essentially our work as urban designers, urban planners, is probably asking the questions and listening to the debate and making that happen. So we know that by the middle of this century, 65% of the world will live in world's population will live in cities. It'll be urbanized. Cities can be creative, thrilling, exciting, liberating, or they can be cruel and inhuman. And these actually are choices. These are political choices. And there's one thing I try and teach in my work at the university, is that actually urban design is an intensely political activity. It's not a technical activity. You are shifting the balance one way or the other, and you have multiple clients in the city. And therefore, you have power, and that power has to be used wisely and sensitively. You can have cities like this. This is West Bay and Doha. Great if you're in the Mercedes. Or cities like this of course, is Barcelona. And it's whether or not we design cities around the exclusive use of a few who can actually afford the Mercedes, or whether we produce cities which are places of intense human activity. The urban challenge, a complete revolution in the last 25 years in the way in which we communicate. The idea of location has been diluted. You can work anywhere, and if you're fortunate enough to be in the part of society that we all are in this room, you're never working and you're never not working. You have a completely fluid form of relationship. Climate change, certainly the decisions we're making now will either set the conditions where we might still have cities at the end of this century or not. And increasingly, fragmentation. The idea, as we've talked about this morning, there's no longer a single set of solutions, as the modernist age would have taught us. There's now a set of fragmentation and the difficulties that causes us in how we actually try and shape cities. In delivering urban growth, the other thing that's interested me in my career has been actually, the longer I've worked, the less important physical form and design has become. And the more important has become the infrastructure of cities. Cities where you have robust civic structures, you have capacity, you have the rule of law, you have democratic institutions, and which are resilient, are the cities which will emerge successfully through these centuries. Those that don't will have very, very serious problems. And the real challenge is the complexity of knitting together these very, very separate urban agendas. And then the city is an open system. I still find it peculiar that we teach and we believe as practitioners that whatever we do is the last word in the city. It'll endure for 500 years. Actually, if you work in urban planning or urban design, you have the privilege of stewardship for a very, very short period of time. You inherit what happened before you, and you have a responsibility to make sure that the next people who take on stewardship have more opportunities, and you open up those opportunities, and you don't close them down. And a city, a great city, is a place which is fluid, a place for chance encounters, a place where you can meet people, a place where you can exchange ideas. I think there's this kind of real tension now in urban design, urban planning, between the people who are still following almost a modernist agenda. Did you create beautiful, efficient patterns? And people who are saying, actually, you've got to completely adapt the urban fabric to allow those chance encounters, those exchanges to happen, to allow knowledge to be exchanged, and for out of that, new forms of democracy to emerge. A lot of talk about smart city. I know my colleague from Kiev is going to talk about smart city. And I don't want to in any way denigrate the idea of a smart city. I think a smart city is the servant of the sustainable city. A smart city, in my definition, maximizes its use of buildings and infrastructure and minimizes its use of resources. Therefore, the technology is the servant of sustainability. It's very, very interesting, actually very scary when you talk to people in, for example, the retail sector, who see technology as a servant of making us consume things, clothing we don't need, holidays we don't need, cars we could do without. And I think there's a real struggle here in this concept of the smart city as to who controls the technology, who uses it. Is it for benefit, or is it potentially a sinister force? I downloaded this off Google, an image of a smart city. Type in smart city, you get this. This is not a smart city. It's got individual forms of transport, it's got freeways, a complete absence of any linked public space. This is a smart city. This is Amsterdam. It's compact. The embodied carbon in these buildings has lasted 450 years and probably lasts another 450 years. It's mixed use, and it's designed around the individual and the needs of the individual. And this should be the lesson that we follow when we actually think about how we apply technologies. Public space is absolutely critical. As a designer, I now believe you start with the public space. Get the public space right, and the buildings just fit in. The buildings as pieces of architecture, you can have good architecture and bad architecture. It's the public space that the democratic life of the city functions in. And that is something to fight for against the trends at the moment to privatize and corporatize public space and place on that restrictions on what the citizen can do. And this is, it's actually Dallas. This is not a great piece of public space. try and get a good cup of coffee in Dallas at 8 o'clock in the morning in downtown Dallas, and you can't do it. This actually is Shanghai. And I use this because an illustration that even in China, where there's a huge, and actually a particularly damaging move towards urbanization in terms of not very sensitive cities, there's the beginning of the flickering back of the needle around thinking about how you reuse space and produce spaces for individuals to enjoy at a human scale. I'll talk just briefly about London. Not to say London's necessarily a paradigm, but to talk about some of the lessons to illustrate them. London went through a fundamental change at the end of the 1990s. Ken Livingstone became the first mayor. He brought in Richard Rogers, the architect. And Richard was very influenced by the European concept of the city and by human scale. And between them, they fashioned a completely different view and agenda for London at the beginning of this century. And in particular, recognizing that London was networked into global cities. This is the work of the Mori Foundation in Tokyo, the Global City Power Index. They publish it every year. I always show it because London comes first, but actually it's interesting that London, Tokyo, New York, Seoul, Hong Kong, Singapore, Paris, Amsterdam are scoring very high. The emerging Chinese and Asian cities actually aren't. And the reason being is that you can't really read this, but they score cities not just in terms of GDP, but in terms of their educational institutions, in terms of accessibility, in terms of their quality of life, and in particular in terms of their cultural offer. Because Mori recognizes that in a global world, with global movement, not just of labour and people, cities that can offer a broad cultural and environmental and a quality of life offer will actually bring in the very, very best people and can actually build their economies on them. And this is quite out of date now. This looks just the culture and sport of London, against New York and Paris in particular. But London outscores New York, even in terms of theatres and theatre performances, on every category. The only category London isn't topping is the number of bars per head of the population, which Paris wins outright. But it's an indication of the way we're beginning to see cities, not so much in terms of their hard offer, but in terms of the culture which they can offer and the life quality that underpins it. I was asked in 2007 to set up the Mayor's design studio, Design for London. And the great thing about it was we had no power, no money. And I think as an agency, I would kind of support this. If you've got no power, you've got no responsibility. And having no responsibility in government is the place to be. Having no money means you don't have to account for public money, so you can have even less responsibility. But the key thing was that people thought we had power. People thought I had fantastic influence over Ken Livingstone's mayor. Actually, I didn't. As long as people thought that, I had power. And I became very interested in the way in which soft power, as opposed to hard power, can shape cities. The first thing we did was to say, if we design for London, who's a Londoner? And after a very long and wonderfully drunken evening, about 2 in the morning, we came up with a definition that a Londoner is somebody who lives in London, which we thought was really quite radical. A New Yorker is somebody who lives in New York. A Parisian is not somebody who lives in Paris. So this idea of an open city interests me. So a place where you can come and become a citizen and be accepted. We became very interested in democratizing the design process. Every project we worked in, we took our design team down into the neighborhood, rented a shop, opened it up, and we debated. And we loved the idea of debate. When I did the King's Cross development in the beginning of this century, about 20 years ago, the developer, extraordinary man called Roger Madeline, made a statement that he'd go anywhere, anytime, and speak to anybody. As head of planning, I had to say the same. Over 5 years, we think we spoke to 30,000 people. It took 5 years. Good business city take a long time. It's like food. I mean, cooking takes a long time if you want to have good food. Cities are it's about slow planning. And this is just every document we produced on King's Cross into the public realm, stopping at each time to debate it. And what it gave us was, we didn't build consensus, but it did give us extraordinary information about what people wanted. And it did engage, and it did allow us to constantly change our minds as to what a good for the city looked like. This is King's Cross today, transformed. It's now achieving the highest rents in London. It seems one of the most popular destinations. And it's got a mixed population. 50% of the housing where we agreed the planning was for affordable for people on low to middle income. So a truly mixed piece of land. And out of this. So this approach is taking the city apart, understanding how it works, putting it back together again, trying to make it work better in a way that makes sense to people in local areas. This can build a very powerful legacy long after the plan has been implemented or not. What you should leave behind is capacity and aspirations and will for people to take responsibility. You could build neighbourhoods piece by piece. A piece of work where we had 70 different small-scale micro-interventions, none of which was particularly important, but together we start to rebuild a neighbourhood, using very simple drawings that people could communicate with, and ultimately implementing micro-spaces. And the best thing about this picture, this was a traffic junction, we produced a micro-space, but the best thing we did was we gave the local cafe owner about €1,500 to buy the pink tables and chairs and take ownership of that and responsibility and animate it. It's discovering within the city there are so many opportunities. You can take these dead pieces of space and produce new pieces of landscape. And think about how the city works 24 hours a day. A good landscape, as actually I saw last night walking around the lake, walked back about 11 o'clock, is still being used. It's all about safe. And that's a sign of success. And then finally, the last bit of my journey was to realise that however good your design is, you've also got to work out how you manage and how you curate and how you stimulate.
Close up the mic there.
And how you stimulate activity. And that led me as Design for London into became very interested in working with jazz bands, working with community groups, working to introduce children's play, and it was the curation of the space, which we then saw finally as part of this seamless design process, from the big idea to the consultation, to the debate, to the curation and management, and then constantly reviewing and going back again and again and adjusting. On a big scale, this is King's Cross, where the spaces are intensely curated to bring people in to the spaces. So, to summarise, there is no easy solution. A mixture of interventions are required. You need different delivery agencies, and cities should never copy another one. You can take ideas, but cities are bespoke. They have a unique culture. And cities should be curious, should learn, and then reinterpret and apply ideas, and develop complex urban forms within which human activity, democratic activity can happen. And my last slide, this is the Olympic Park. The practice I used to work for designed this. We didn't design the woman who is reading her book sitting in this landscape. Maybe the success, going back to the earlier theme, is that good cities allow multiple acts of discrete disobedience. And that is how debate happens. And as designers, we're here to create the opportunities for that disobedience to drive the agenda, allow people to reinterpret the spaces, to enjoy their lives and communicate with each other. Thanks very much.
Very much. That was wonderful, and I just love that image of the young woman sitting there. Discrete acts of civil disobedience. We got a slight message: multiple acts of discrete disobedience. That's wonderful, to open up to this sort of tolerance of all forms of life. What Peter's team did with the King's Cross area of London is, to me as a user, one of the most dramatic examples of turning a miserable, tired, awful place that you didn't want to go near into somewhere that you actually say, oh, I'll meet you at King's Cross. Oh, we'll do something at King's Cross. It's a complete transformation. Sorry. It's on. It's on. It's on. It is very exciting, actually, what you can do. Yuri, you're going to give us your presentation now of the challenges you face here in Kiev and how you're going about it.
Thank you. I apologize. I prepared presentation in Ukrainian, but I try explain what are we doing in Kiev city. As Peter told, smart city is the one of element of modern services for citizen. And today I'll tell you about our city, about our smart city services, and what are we doing, and how can we make our citizen more happy, maybe. First of all, when we started initiative Kyiv Smart City, it was more than 3 years ago. Our main idea was connect 3 key powers in the city: civil society, business, and city government. And our idea was that only in this case is possible to make transformation of the city, to make digital transformation of the city and provide different services. We did investigation, more than 1,000 people. We decided and we defined several key areas that we need to transform. First, transportation. Next, energy and utility. Next, public safety. Next, medicine, and optimization of city government. And according to that, we developed Kyiv Smart City Concept 2020. We approved it on city council, on level of discussion with our citizen, and we defined key projects, how we realize this concept. If we are talking about architectural solutions, of course, we should implement different solutions like fiber optic channels, for transferring data, city data center, common geoinformation system, workflow system, etc., etc. And based on these solutions, we install different industrial solutions, like for transport, dispatching system. These are GPS trackers on every car unit. This is e-ticket, etc. And we use typical IT landscape for implementing different solutions. When we started our project, basically we was focused on transparency and efficiency of government. For us, transparency was important because our citizens should believe to city government, should understand what are we doing, how we use city resources, how we use finance, how we financial resources, how we use land, municipal buildings, etc., etc. That's why first project was open budget. We opened all of financial information to the citizen. Every night we upload all of data from state treasury, all of financial transactions, and now our citizen have information about incomes to city budget, about expenses from city budget. Our citizen understand how much money was spent for district, for industry, for medicine, for example, for concrete hospital, for school. Our citizen can understand who was contractors, total amount of contract, how much money was spent in contract, etc., etc. We try to make our city government clear from point of view finances. Of course, next project was electronic purchases. Maybe you know, we have system Prozoro, and all of purchases in city government go through electronic procurement system, and thanks that now we have more than $200 million saving city budget in 3 years. Of course, this money we used for social needs, for repair of roads, etc., etc. Next, we opened information about land, about municipal property, and we provide open data platform, open data site, where our citizen can receive all of information about city in one place. Next kind of projects was electronic democracy projects. Yeah, our idea was first of all make engagement of citizen, involve our citizen in city living, in city management. And first of this project was contact center 1551, where all of our citizens can call, can tell about problem in utility, for example, garbage on the street, hole on the street, etc., etc. And the task of this service, solve this service, connect with utility services, and answer for this request. Of course, we develop portal, internet portal, where can you make order in electronic kind, and we develop mobile application where can you photo, for example, garbage or hole on the road and send to city contact center. This contact center works 24/7. Every time, more than 40 people sitting in our contact center and answer on questions of citizens. Every day we have about 3,000 requests from our citizens. Next tool of electronic democracy was e-petitions. Our idea was next. If you see problem in the city, or you would like to solve different problems in the city, you make petition. If you have 10,000 followers, they should vote. In this case, city government should solve this problem, review and solve this problem. Thank that, now we have 54 petitions that have 10,000 voters, supporters. And we realized that, at this time we realized that 6 petitions, yeah, like public transport at night time, lighting at night time, etc. Different from different areas of city living tasks and requests. Next interest project is participating budget. Of course, this is not our idea. This is idea from our colleagues from Canada and Spain. We have budget in city, and we use this budget for citizen projects. How it works? For example, you would like implement project, yeah. For example, build sport ground, yeah, or repair the building. Whatever, absolutely different project from absolutely different areas. You publish in this project, you calculate preliminary costs of this project, and after that we have voting, and according to voting we define project which city government should realize. On this year we started this project 3 years ago, and for example, 3 years ago we have budget $1 million for participating budget projects. On this year we have $3 million, $5 million on participation budget projects. We have at this time about 200,000 participators who voted for city project. We think this is a very good case when citizens can involve in city living and spend money for needs they defined. Yeah. Next services is the order to kindergarten. Next services is the order to the doctor. For example, yearly, if you would like go to the doctor, you should spend minimum half day You should spend a lot of nervous time, etc. And now, when we implemented this project, every day more than 5,000 people go to the doctor through our electronic system and define concrete hospital, concrete doctor, and concrete time. This is figures concerning participating budget project. Our citizens happy, we are happy because we spend money for projects that citizen define. And according to that, we built e-democracy platform. The task of e-democracy platform, maximum involvement of our citizen in city living and in city management. Very important point that we need to identify people. And that's why for us was serious task. We built Kyiv ID, and now you can make vote only in case if you are using bank ID, mobile ID, or digital signature. In this case, we sure that this is real citizen, this is real man, and in this case we avoid and we have not absolutely manipulation, because this is real voting for the project. One of our idea is provide all of services, basically the most part of services in electronic kind. We would not like that our citizens spend time for going to our employees, because this is bureaucracy, this is corruption, of course. And now at that time we founded cabinet, electronic cabinet of citizen, where can you pay for utility services, buy electronic ticket, vote in participating budget project, make petition, etc., etc., etc. And all of time we increase quantity of services. Thanks that we 1 month we launched a mobile application, because we understand trend that our citizens use mobile applications, use mobile devices more and more and more. And our idea in 2, 3, 4 clicks receive all of city services. Kyiv resident card, more than 800,000 citizen has a Kyiv resident card, personal card, banking card, non-contact card, and thanks this card, our citizen can receive different services. Yep, go in public transport, receive discount in supermarkets. For example, for social groups, this card useful. They have free enter to public transport. They have discount on social bread, discount on 300 kind of social drugs, etc., etc. And we increase quantity of this card. As I told, mobile application for us now like virtual electronic card. Basically, young people use, of course, mobile application. But we have future in Kyiv resident card, and this is like passport, like ID for our citizen, because we have strong identification and understanding that information about citizen. As I told, the mobile application you can download on Apple Store, on Google Play. Now we started transport applications, and now we'll enhance more and more and more quantity of services that we use. Electronic ticket, one of our biggest project and complex project. We installed validators on public transport, on underground transport. We have, for your information, we have 1,500 buses, trolley buses and trams. And this is huge works, because we should install onboard computers, validators, and the quantity of validators more than 5,000. Yeah, we did that. Now our citizen can use Kyiv Smart Card, and our idea was this system unified for different kinds for payment. You can buy Kyiv Smart Card, like on picture. You can use banking card, You can use mobile application. You can use paper ticket with QR code. You can use chatbot, etc., etc., etc. All of kinds that suitable for you, you can use. Next, all of our transport has GPS trackers. Thanks that we can manage our transport, like public and technological transport. And we make monitoring rooms, dispatching rooms for managing transport in our city. And this is one of our strategy project. And now in our plans connect private transport companies to this system. CCTV system, we installed more than 7,000 cameras. We have a cloud platform, all of cameras online connected to this platform, online transfer data. We have storage 10 petabytes for storing 1 month information from all of cameras. We installed video analytics system. We have car numbers recognition, we have face recognition, and thanks that our police reduced seriously criminal situation in our city. For our police, it's not problem to find a criminal, to find the car, etc., to make tracking of the car, etc. These cameras installed in public places, on social objects like schools, kindergartens, museums, theaters, etc. On enters and exits from the city, and these cameras cover all of our city. Smart lighting, one of element of smart city, depends of light on the street, depends on the time of the day. We can manage the lighting, and thanks that we reduce costs for lighting on 35–40%. Just 1 week ago, we launched a project, ecological monitoring of the air in our city. We built an IoT platform for collecting data from different sensors, and this information absolutely open. This information published on our internet portal, and thanks that our citizen can understand the quality of air. I can tell you quality of air is not good. Yes. And yesterday we launched the first smart street. Idea of this smart street, show to another citizen how we see city in the future. This is first idea. We have electric charge, we have 12 cameras, we have smart benches with solar panels and with possibility to charge smartphone. We have bike rental, we have air quality sensors, we have emergency button, we have separate garbage collect, etc., etc. And from another hand, we provide this street like living lab for startups, for another companies. If you have idea, it's no problem, go to the street, install your sensor or another solution and connect to city digital infrastructure. Of course, we provide access to all of our data for startups, and thanks that we opened an accelerator of city projects. Our idea and our vision, we provide our city as a platform for testing solution. Because I see that basically startups has problem, they don't have area where can they test solutions. We provide our city for testing. Thanks that we launched we launched 5 startups. We opened a representative office of Accelerator of City project in Silicon Valley, in Redwood City. And now we have 1 startup from Silicon Valley, and our ideas for all of startups, not from Ukraine, not only from Ukraine, but from all the world. And thanks that our expectation, we support startups, but at the same time, we increase quantity of services for citizens. application startups that we launched thanks our accelerator EasyWay mobile application where can you define time of arrival of buses, trolley buses or trams. Very useful application. Every day more than 30,000 citizens use this application. Next, Poliklinika Beshcherk. Next, this is order to the doctor. It was startup. After that, this startup became a serious project, and now all of Kyiv works based on this platform, and half of Ukraine use this system for order to kindergarten. And chatbot based on artificial intelligence from our colleagues from Silicon Valley. Idea chatbot will answer for different questions from citizens. Based on information from our informational system and artificial intelligence technology. This is description of this chatbot, and this is QR code of mobile application. You can download it. This is briefly about key projects because online we have more than, as I remember, 46 projects, and as I told, our idea make our city modern, made our city smart, comfortable, and give for our citizens tool how they can involve and how they can be involved in city management and city planning, and of course transparency for our citizens. Thank you for your attention. If you will have questions, I answer, of course.
Thank you very, very much, Yuri, for that presentation on Smart Kiev. I'm going to put you both up there, and I'm going to come down here and try and collect some questions from the students, which I think we'll put direct to you. So why don't you start?
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Anya. I'm from Kharkiv. I'm a scholar of Democracy Study Center. So I have basically two questions. One of them is for the first presentation. So my question is, in your opinion, from the design urbanism point of view, what's easier to work with already built cities and make changes there, or is it easier to build like a completely new city from scratch? So, for example, we can compare Sagon, the city in South Korea, right? Or we can take some city in India, or maybe some progressive European city like Amsterdam, which is like easier to tailor for people's needs, let's say. And should I ask the second question at once to the other speaker? Okay, so regarding Kyiv Smart City, my question is firstly, who pays for all these innovational projects? Do you split the costs between the public and private sectors? Is it like a model, financial model for those projects? And second one, will you think about some kind of inclusive projects in smart cities? So for example, for disabled people or visually impaired people, are these on the agenda in future? Thank you.
Who wants to go? Peter?
If I answer the first and Yuri the second question, I think. Look, I have to admit, with one exception, I've never designed a new city. And the one time I have designed a new city, it's incredibly difficult. Or it's very easy, and that's the problem. It's very easy to produce a new city. It's incredibly difficult to make it work. I think the advantage of established cities is that they have grown their social infrastructure over time. They've become communities of interest, or they've failed, actually. Cities do fail, but if they haven't failed, then they slowly adapt and they mature, and you get social networks that make it work. And I'm presently doing some research asking exactly that question for housing developments. If you're establishing new housing developments, what do you need to do to build social capital at the beginning of the scheme, to build the social facilities before the economy will support them? And how do you create the conditions that people become engaged in their communities as opposed to becoming isolated behind their front doors? And ultimately, self-evidently, it's a good idea to try and do that. finding ways in which you fund it and organize it is incredibly difficult because the standard development model is to build, sell, and move on. The advantage we have at King's Cross is the developer wanted to retain the estate and therefore had a long-term interest. So trying to build in long-term interest for the developers and build the community infrastructure is far more essential than any design techniques.
Okay, thank you. Concerning financing of our projects, we have three key sources of financing. First, these are our friends, donors. Yeah, they basically support us in projects of efficiency, transparency of city government. Yeah, one of example, German fund GIZ. They support us in open budget project. For example, another funds like USAID and Renaissance, they support us in implementation of electronic purchases, developing of Kyiv Smart City concept, etc. Next kind of projects of financing, these are PPP projects. PPP projects, of course, interest for investors when they receive return of investments. Yeah, these are projects with monetization. For example, city Wi-Fi underground in our subway. This is typical PPP project where we use money of investors. And the third part, of course, this is city budget. City budget we spend basically on infrastructural projects, yeah, like fiber optic channels, data center, city databases, etc., etc. What about inclusivity? We have program, inclusivity on the roads, and what about smart city solutions? We have startup for blind people. It was a very interesting startup, and we support our guys from Kyiv Polytechnical Institute. Idea of this startup: install sensors, voicing sensors, and install mobile application. And when blind people use this application, and when you go to the supermarket, for example, or to the pharmacy, or to the metro station, this sensor beeper starts beep. And in this case, blind people should go on this voice. Yeah, and this is one of realization of this problem. Yeah, thank you.
Anybody over here for a question? I know I've got more over here. Okay, who's going to ask a question down here?
Hello, my name is Sergey. I'm from Kryvyi Rih, and I have a short question to Yuri about 10,000 voters under the petitions. What do you think? It's not a big amount of voters for petition, because, for example, in Kryvyi Rih, it's a city, maybe 500,000 people, maybe a little bit more, and we had 500 voters for petition to be approved in the city government. And local deputies decided that it should be increased to 1,000, and it was big protests in our city. What about Kyiv? Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's very important to find some balance. Yeah, and understand how many people should involve on city decisions. We investigated, you know that we have about 4 million people in our city, and we investigate how many people can influence, yeah, on city decisions, and we decided 10,000. I explain you why not 1,000. Because when we have 1,000 voters, we have some spam of proposals, and in this case city council will not able to proceed all of these requests, and that's why we increase quantity of voters for solving problematic questions in our city, and that's why we have 10,000. 54. That petitions, they have 10,000 voters. But for example, if you have 1,000 petitions, you can imagine it's absolutely impossible to realize that.
Thoughts on that subject, or shall I get another question?
Another question, I think.
Right, Juliana.
Hi, thank you. I'm Juliana Kerr. I'm from Chicago. My question actually is for Yuri, and Peter, please chime in. It's a lot on the smart cities. When we talk about all the new technologies, the question that a lot of cities I've seen have is how to regulate around these new technologies. We bring in, smart apps for the phones, or with Uber. There's so many protests happening in cities around the world. How is Kyiv dealing with the regulation and the governance side as all these new technologies are being launched every day by new companies?
This is for us, and as for me, who responds for IT in city, this is big problem. Because I don't remember who told, but our state government, our civil society go forward on 30 years. That our state government, because technologies grows extremely fast. And for example, one of project Prozoro, electronic purchases, we had have absolutely no regulation in electronic purchases. But we started this project, and only after 1 year, regulation and the city and the state legislation was approved. And this is problem, of course, because maybe it could be illegal. And that's why our idea, but we're not able to wait, for regulation or legislation. And that's why our idea, we implement model solution, and at this time prepare all of documents for legislation approval. Next example, for example, now we started to implement chatbot, artificial intelligence, and in this case, we develop document concerning ethic of artificial intelligence and using of artificial intelligence, because this is case where a computer will receive what to do and how to do. For example, autonomic cars. Now this is they have some problem because in case of accident, who will respond for that? Developer, or the car, or police. And of course we are going forward, but after that implement regulation.
I think there are two big problems you've raised. I mean, first of all, is that technology is moving a lot faster than government. And governments are just not agile enough to keep pace with it. That may not be a problem, but what technology is doing is that government, which enjoyed a monopoly over certain things like transport in the city and control and regulation, no longer has that. And I think it's posing really interesting questions as to how government reacts. I think in Yuri's presentation, a very impressive presentation on the way that Kyiv is embracing technology, essentially to foster democratic involvement and creating stakeholders. But in a mature system, even something like Uber in London has created really interesting policy challenges. As an example, I have to admit, I own 2 cars, but I cycle everywhere. Both my children do not have a driving license, and they Uber everywhere. Their carbon footprint in terms of driving is about 4 times mine, I worked out, in terms of the amount of road space they're occupying, whereas I don't because I cycle. And the problems of regulation and technology are ones which we're going to be wrestling with. Then finally, I don't think cities have even started to understand how they use big data. Whereas the technology companies have got this, and corporations have got this. Cities are a long way behind the use of big data. And therefore, I think big data is being used against government rather than for the benefit of government. Those are huge, great urban policy issues you've pinpointed.
Thanks both very much. I've got a question I'd like to put to you. For the last 50 years or so, 60, maybe more, we've been designing our cities overwhelmingly around the motor car and around things like out-of-town shopping centres. Is it too late to repair that awful damage that we've done?
No, is the optimistic answer. No. I mean, possibly the advantage is that at least we have road infrastructure, which is a fantastic resource. Something London's done actually rather well has been remove capacity in the road system away from the private car towards public transport and cycling and walking. I think cities can actually move back relatively easily. I think there's a problem with the way that urban design is going, particularly in a lot of Asian cities, where the hard wiring in of urban form is going to dictate patterns of behavior for a whole generation. I think it's a very, very simple mantra that buildings should be simple and cities should be complex. Actually, when you look at what's happening, we're producing highly complex buildings and really simplistic urban form. And I think that the real challenge at the macro scale, when you look at design, is how we produce the fine grain within a city that allows the city to constantly adapt into a future which we cannot even start to predict. And it's embracing uncertainty and building in flexibility. But it's not too late to go back. I mean, you have to make a decision. When you make that decision, you align your policies. And it's not just a question of one or two moves. It's a complete policy alignment between transportation, land use planning, and technologies.
Doing something in Kiev to reduce the focus on the motor car?
Oh, for us, this is a difficult and complex question, yeah, because unfortunately we have post-Soviet system management, and post-Soviet, let's call urbanistic system, yeah, and I don't know really. And in this case, for example, what about my specialization? Yeah, I'm going to different cities, to Barcelona, to Amsterdam, to Seoul, Tokyo, etc. We investigate technological solutions, and only after that we implement these solutions. London too, for us, example of transport management. Yeah, but what about urbanistics, and what about what to do with public places, etc.? Only using experience of our foreign colleagues, I'm sure we'll solve this not problem, task, serious, complex tasks, and only in this case. And I'm sure using our post-Soviet experience here, it's impossible.
Yes, Peter.
I mean, what is actually quite interesting in London is that car ownership is reducing dramatically at the moment. From a peak in the 1990s, it's being reduced year on year. So I think as you get a certain point in the development of an economy and a city, then as long as there are rational alternatives and policies and political will to push them, then actually there's an ability for people to embrace this idea of leaving the car behind.
Just made here, car ownership is reducing in Western Europe. Yeah. Maybe not in Eastern.
It isn't, but maybe it's just you are later on the curve, and 15, 20 years' time, that will also happen.